Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've just kicked off. My name is Matt, and this here is Bob. And today we are going to be helping you get hired in 2025. But before we start looking at some ways of how to do that, I just want to share a little bit of a story with you about how Bob and I actually became acquainted and why social media and networking is so important now. Bob and I first encountered each other, I want to say it was probably about 7 years ago, Bob. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, 7, 8 years
Yeah.
ago now, I
Yeah.
think it was.
7 or 8 years ago for a contract opportunity that unfortunately at the time didn't go anywhere. I think the client just changed requirements or the project didn't happen, whatever. But we've supported one another and like engaged with each other's content for the past however long. And all of that has eventually led to us collaborating here now. And I've had some exposure to your network, you've had exposure to my network, and it's completely unquantifiable what the results of that sort of are. Um, but the long term benefit is that we're actually here doing this webinar together. And I know that if there was a Microsoft 365 role, I would be the first person that you'd think of. And, because we're engaged with each other. And if there was a requirement for a client of mine to recruit in, I'd say, oh, you need to talk to Bob, just because of that constant ongoing engagement and dialogue that we have with one another. And that's an example of how the long game with social media and networking can really, really benefit you in your search for employment, search for a contract gig or freelance opportunity. Another just very brief story I'd like to say is how it can immediately benefit you as well. My stepbrother actually has had the pleasure of working with James May, as in the James May from Top Gear, in launching a gin brand. And it all came off the back of one tweet that James put out when he was launching the brand. And then my stepbrother replied with a funny quip on Twitter, and he liked it so much that they engaged in a DM conversation and then just went from there. And he worked with him for about 18 months getting the brand off the ground, and they're now in a really successful place. And it just, again, if he hadn't have been present on the platform and there and opening himself up to those opportunities, that would never have happened. So a lot of the focus of this session is going to be around the importance of networking and the importance of relationship building, but with a whole load of stuff about your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and other tips interwoven in and amongst it. So I've done enough of a monologue now. Bob, why don't you tell everybody in the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, the engagement and constant interaction with people on social media and LinkedIn is so important. But yes, so hi, I'm Bob. I I help solve hiring problems for tech managers. So mostly that's through the traditional recruitment services, so permanent recruitment, contract recruitment. But I also provide market insights, so recruitment guidance, recruitment best practices. I help with recruitment health checks for companies, so looking at where they're at now, what they can do to improve, and help them design recruitment campaigns that quickly and effectively hire great people. I've been in tech recruitment for 19 years, and just over 9 years, 9.5 years, has been running my own tech recruitment agency.
So it's fair to say, Bob, that not only are you quite good at the recruitment thing, but you're also quite an accomplished and successful business owner.
That's nice of you to say, Matt. I'd like to think so.
I know that neither of us are a fan of blowing our own trumpet, so I'm going to have to blow yours, and you're going to have to blow. Oh wait, no, that's gone horribly wrong. Let's share the deck.
It's recorded. It's been
Yeah,
recorded, Matt. You said it.
I've said it. It's happened. Too late. Okay, right. Let's let's dive into some of the content then. So get hired in 2025. The agenda that we're going to go over is the state of the market. We're going to look at some ways you can make your CV really attractive and stand above everybody else in the massive pile of applications. How you can optimize your LinkedIn profile to attract people and get them coming to you. And then we're going to talk about networking, some application best practices, and wrap everything up at the end. But before we get there, I just want to say the market isn't what it was. Those golden years of 2005 to 2015. Oh, someone's just said they can't see any of the content, which is not helpful. Okay, interesting. 1 second. Let me just try and share the PowerPoint deck with you again. Can you guys see the content now? Oh, Christian's saying works. Yeah, yeah, no, yes. Got a load of thumbs up. Okay, hopefully, yes. Okay, good, cool, right. Shared this time. Did exactly the same thing the second time. Don't know. There we go. Apologies about that, but okay. For those who can't see it, it sounds like you just might be on a little bit of a lag. Maybe resize your screen, anything like that, because you're getting a mixed response. It's not. We'll share the deck after the session anyway.
I was going to suggest that. That sounds like a good idea.
Exactly. We're going to talk through. I'm not through. I hate death by PowerPoint, so everything that you need will be talked about and discussed anyway. The market isn't what it was, and that's due to a number of reasons. The off-payroll working reforms that were introduced, i.e., the changes to IR35, has changed the way that people engage with contractors. You had the massive perm layoffs in 2022 and 23. That's led to few opportunities with lots and lots more applicants, and also the impending change of a government and the general election, I think, really did put the clappers on things, Bob. It's fair to say.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 2022 was a great year for recruitment. There was hiring all over the place, and then it all changed with what you're about to come on to here.
Yeah, absolutely. It just everything changed, and it got a lot more competitive in the marketplace. I think though for 2025 and beyond, we've got a few reasons to be super optimistic, particularly for those who are freelance and working on a contract basis. You've got the changes to national insurance that were announced in the budget. You've also got the changes to 2-year employment rights where they're being granted immediately. You've got the fix for the off-payroll working reforms where clients were potentially paying all of the back tax of an engagement with no regard to the tax that had already been paid toward it by the contractor. And also you've got a change where clients will probably look at hiring fractionally more seriously as a result of all of that. But additionally, generally, now that the election's out of the way, everything, and we've got a government that we know is going to be stable for a few years, things are opening up and employers are starting to go, right, okay, well, now we need to just plan for the next 5 years and see where that leaves us. So overall demand for workers is definitely increasing in 2025, is I think the message that we're both echoing.
Yeah, and we've already seen signs of that from our side, agency side as well. So 2022 up here, fantastic. 2023, it dropped off quite considerably. A few factors behind that, but everyone feared the recession was coming. There was increased cost of living. Interest rates were going through the roof, and a lot of companies were just worried about what that meant for their business and put the brakes on. Then 2023 started to recover. 2024 much better, and the back end of 24 was really good. So it's looking much better for 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is echoed, funnily enough, Bob, in this table that we have with some ONS statistics around job vacancies. And it's funny, the way that you notionally described it anecdotally from what just you're seeing in your particular agency really is echoed in these stats that are provided by the ONS. So there was an abundance of vacancies and available jobs in 22. That dropped off in 23. In 2024, it fell off of a cliff edge, and now we're starting to see things rebound. And in fact, we did start to see things rebound toward the end of 2024, sort of around the Q3 kind of time. Things did start to pick up, and I think that momentum is very much carrying on into 2025. So I know what you're all probably thinking. Yes, Matt, Bob, we know that the market's not great, but it's picking up. Thank you very much. Let's just get to something that's a bit more useful. And with that, we're going to start talking about CVs and how to make yours stand out. I should say we have included some examples in the deck for those who can see it, and hopefully everybody can now. of what good and what bad looks like, but we are going to talk through everything as well. So don't panic if for some reason you can't see it or you're having Teams display issues. So the
Yeah,
first, go on, Bob. Sorry.
sorry. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I've pulled together some examples that I've put on there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And like I said, we've redacted everything. That we haven't included anyone's names or PII or anything like that. So you shouldn't see anything that you need to worry about on there. CVs and how to make yours stand out. Some examples. First of all, I just want to talk about a few rules of the road with Bob. So these are just some general rules that you should all be following just right off the bat. And that's no more than 3 pages. You do not want a super long CV, do you, Bob?
I couldn't agree more. In fact, it's one of the big turnoffs. If you see, and I have seen 10, 15, 20, 30-page CVs sometimes. You
30.
just you don't want to spend that. You're looking for a reason to hone in. So my analogy here is your CV is like your shop window, okay? And you want people to glance at it and go, "Oh, that's good. I want to read more." So the analogy is you're walking down the high street, you're looking in shops, and the shops want you to be tempted enough to go, "That's great. I'm going to go inside and have a look around and see what else they've got." It's a tough market. It really is. So you've really got to try and make yourself stand out.
You've got to capture
Um,
attention. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Getting attention in that moment. You've got what, maybe 7 seconds?
yep, it's not
Yeah,
long. But
not
if you're
long.
putting people off, then they probably won't read the rest of your CV.
Yeah, that makes sense. The second point is to demonstrate the value that you've added and don't write a skills shopping list because ultimately, the people that are hiring you aren't looking for 40 things on a checklist. They're looking for how you can help them change their working environment, right? Or what enhancements you can bring to the table.
Yep, exactly. I always tell people their CV should be achievement led and success led because people want to know what you actually done, what you've achieved, what your return of investment is going to be, why they should hire you. So yeah, talk with facts and figures. Um, Talk about the projects in detail if you can. Talk about the projects. Don't say things like I helped elicit requirements from stakeholders because if you're a BA, we know exactly what a BA does. We don't need to know that. We need to know the juicy bits of information that's going to capture people's attention and make them go, right, I'm going to read more. This person sounds good.
Yeah, and that can be quite hard sometimes in tech, isn't it? Because if you've got a salesperson, for example, that's absolutely stellar and they said, "Yeah, I achieved 150% of my target every year that I worked at XYZ." That's quite easily quantifiable and it's quite easy to measure. But if you've got someone who works in, say, writing applications, or actually, I'm going to make it harder, Bob. I'm going to make it harder. Cybersecurity, where nothing ever happened. They managed to keep the lights on. It was all good. Everything worked, but they're moving on because they want a new company and a new challenge. It can be really hard to quantify the value, and you have to look really hard at what you've done to kind of do that to get some numbers, right?
Yeah, well, top tip is do it whilst you're working. Don't wait until you're writing a CV and think back and go, bloody hell, what did I do in the last 12 months? You want
Hmm.
to keep a diary, essentially, and go, right, here's the project I've done this month, and some very quick bullet points on it. And then at the end, when you come to write your CV, you can look back and you've got all this juicy information to hand.
Do you know what? That is absolute gold, actually. Because so few people do that. If you just keep something in OneNote or Notion or anything like that, and you can also use that for content, which I'll come on to later, because you want to be showing stuff that's impactful and things that are going to make a difference. So again, that's such a good tip. Um, Another point that I've got noted down here is to write in your own voice, but avoid superfluous language.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to be. There's a fine line. You don't want to talk too. You don't want it to be too corporate and superfluous. But yeah, you want to bring your own character into it. Definitely.
Especially if you're not on the contract side, you're on the permanent side, right? Because people aren't just hiring you for an outcome. I mean, they are, but they're also a lot more interested in what you're going to be like as a person and how you're going to become part of the company culture and whether that's going to be a fit. So I guess sort of two sides to this call. There's a side for contractors and freelancers, and the side for people that are looking at perm. And you probably would write your CV slightly differently, right?
I think so. Yeah, more personal in a perm sense because you're buying into someone on a much longer basis on a perm
Mhm.
side.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Complete sense. I've got a couple of points that we don't really need to discuss quite so much, which is to include industry relevant qualifications and certificates, but avoid irrelevant ones. Um, to avoid custom fonts, overly fancy layouts, or anything that's going to affect readability. And actually, just to unpack that very quickly, how often do recruiters use like bits of AI or tools or algorithms to scan CVs, Bob? Is that something you do? What's your experience with that?
There are, when you go to the job boards and you look and you search for CVs, you
Mm,
run a search string and it pulls back the most relevant people based on its algorithms to sort CVs. So if you're be careful. If you're filling your CV with the right keywords, then you're going to appear towards the top. If you're just throwing everything in, then it won't look great, of course. But you want to make sure a lot of the right tech is in there, and you're talking about everything that you've done. And
mhm.
then it's up to the recruiter to go through and start reading it properly. But yeah, it's used right from the job boards searching. If your CV you've uploaded onto the job board, it starts right at that stage.
So I guess almost like writing a LinkedIn profile or a landing page for SEO, you do have to be a little bit mindful that there will be some keywords that you need to hit. So if I'm looking to become a Microsoft 365 architect for a consultancy, I want to mention the fact that I've worked in consultancy, that I deal with Microsoft 365, probably include M365 as an abbreviation in there somewhere, and maybe even in relation to Office 365 because the name changing thing happened, and cover
Yeah,
all the bases.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So I
Okay.
can talk about it from the agency side. You've also got the client side where they use job portals for people to apply. I would imagine they've got their own
Mm,
screening too, and that's a more challenging one. I'd like to think every CV that comes through, I will be aiming to look at. I hope it's the same from internal side, but they'll have a web portal and they may have some jobs, some screening applications to look at CVs as well.
that makes complete sense. And lastly, there are no excuses for spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, and you should be using things like ChatGPT to check your work, even if it's in particular blocks at a time. I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? Don't use it to write things for you straight off the bat, but absolutely use it to check your work.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Back in the day, we used to say, "Get a friend to look at it," and now we can use ChatGPT.
ChatGPT is very quickly becoming my best friend at this point.
Yeah,
I do find myself using it more and more. Okay, so I'm going to sort of hand off to you now, Bob, and we've got some examples of some CVs here. So this is an example of a bad CV. Why don't you sort of tell us why this is a bad CV?
yep. So I've got some bad examples, some good examples. So this is an example of a bad CV. Firstly, text is pretty horrible. The fonts. It's 2 pages, so pretty good in terms of length. But if you look, the introduction is non-existent.
Hmm.
And employment history 2013 to 2025, 12 years is summed up in 5 words, providing video and AD services. Right. Okay. Instantly, that's a bit of a red flag and a bit of a turn off. Yes, they put some clickable links further down the page. So you can click to look at some portfolio
But then
stuff.
you've got to go and do the digging, right? That's saying my time is more valuable than yours. I'm not going to give you the content here. If you're interested, you go find it, pal.
And I'm okay with that if it's wowing me, and it's not wowing me at all.
Okay, that
You
makes
move
sense.
to the other page, it's just a word dump of keywords as well. So yeah,
In
great. If
in
you've worked with
hashtag
somebody
in
who's,
hashtag format.
I know.
I've
Um,
never seen anything quite like it.
so yes, you might have worked with all those, but it doesn't tell me anything. I work with all sorts of different technologies, but I might be an expert, I might not be an expert. It doesn't tell me anything at all.
No. Okay, interesting. And then we have another example here. And we've talked about this and touched on it already. I'd just like to draw everybody's attention to the big red box at the bottom. 15 pages and 6,000 words.
Yeah.
My
So
word.
these, so two different examples here. The one on the left, at first glance, it actually looks okay because it's got a very quick career summary at the top. It
Mhm.
talks about the industries and their security clearance, great. Their professional summary, perhaps a little bit longer than might be needed, but it's okay. And then goes into some technical overview as well, bullet pointed, great. So that in itself is like, yeah, okay, I'll read a little bit more until you glance down and you see 1 of 15. Sorry, I don't have
No.
a lot of time, and I definitely don't have much time to read
I
beyond that point.
I've got 49 other candidates for this role. Whilst your initial high level high line looks good, I don't have time to read all of that. So if the other 20 that have better CVs don't work out, maybe I'll come back to it. Is that kind of where this goes in the pile, or does it just literally go right? No, I'm not even going to entertain it.
I would very quickly keep glancing, but it would be
Okay.
a glance. It wouldn't be a read. I want to. I'm looking for reasons to keep reading rather than
Mhm.
um, and things like this just going to put you off.
No, that makes sense. And talk me through what's on the right, because I when you sent me this to put into the deck, I genuinely was perplexed, and I'm curious.
Yeah, so I see graphics on CVs all the time, and I'm a big I dislike graphics unless you
Okay.
work in graphic design, perhaps. But what this is doing is just very simply showing the reader how long they've worked at different companies in years. Um, you get that information when you read the CV anyway.
I
I
Yeah.
think you should keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate CVs. Um, Sometimes less is more.
And also just going back to that tooling element, you know, if you if you put too much complex stuff on CVs, it upsets the tools and how they read them, right? And complicated fonts or anything like that can be just another trip hazard in the process. So keeping them, readable but simple, not as simple and flat and horrible as all those hashtags, but a nice balance in between, which
Yeah.
I'm hoping we're going to come onto here with an example of a good CV.
Good CV, yeah. So only one page, and I'm actually a bit of a believer of it being perhaps a little bit longer than one page because
Mhm.
is it too little information? This person's only been working in the industry for a handful of years, so perhaps it's not a bad thing. Um, Good picture, good summary, bullet points on some of the expertise. Moving on to the experience, that's bullet pointed too, and talked about some of the projects and education at the bottom, which is, I think, where it should be. As you move through your career, your education becomes less important and it's more about your experience.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
very nice to look at as well. It's a good visual CV.
It is. I remember thinking when I saw that, oh yeah, that page really draws me in. I have to say that if thinking about it from like an IT person, I would maybe hire people who are like maybe second line level with a one page CV, but any more than I would say 6 or 7 years experience, and I'm kind of expecting to see a little bit more content. But with that added context of, you can see this person left university in 2020. Actually, I think having it all on one page is great and making it eye grabbing. We haven't talked about this at all offline, Bob, and so I'm going to put you on the spot. How do you feel about photos in CVs? I've got an opinion. I'm curious as to what yours is.
My opinion is don't do it because it opens you up for discrimination. Um,
Like,
Someone might not like the look of you for whatever reason. They just
yeah.
might think and make a judgment on you based on that itself.
So I completely agree. And if they want to go and get an idea of who you are, what you look like, and learn more, that's exactly what your LinkedIn profile's for, is my
Yeah.
view. So there you go. Another top tip. If you've got a picture in your CV, maybe take it out. So this is another good example of a good CV. Bob, tell me why is this good? What are we looking at?
I like this. It's 2 pages, so it's a good length. There's a bit of colour in the CV. Now,
Mm,
I think that should be kept to a minimum. But what they've
okay.
done here is they've just put they've made it into blue, the key headings and everything, just making it very easy on the eye, and really good to read. Um, Good summary, bullet points around the technical expertise. Moving on to the employment background, there's a bit of info and then bullet points around some of their achievements. So really good. And then again, topped off with education at the end. That was a nice CV to look at.
Yeah, so my techie brain is immediately soothed because you've got sections, you've got everything like nested nicely. You've got formatting. I can find exactly what I need to find just by like, reviewing the page very quickly and picking out the bits that I'm most interested in. And it just, like you say, it makes it really easy to read. And so, yeah, for me, if I was looking as a hiring manager at this, I would be thinking, yeah, this is a good CV, and I'm interested to learn more. And that's the thing, isn't it? We're not trying to get the job here. We're trying to get a conversation, right?
Exactly. Enough, sprinkle in enough information to get them interested and start a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I'm a huge fan of that, and I think that's a really good reminder for people is that you're not trying to land the job with your CV. You're not. You are just trying to get yourself into a door that is now open, so that you can then go and say why you're going to be a fantastic fit and warrant someone taking the time to have that discussion with you. So we do have a few questions on the CVs which came in, which hopefully some of them we've answered and some of them we haven't answered, and we are still doing the Q&A at the end. So we're going to move on now onto LinkedIn profiles and how to optimize them to get noticed, and some more examples of what good and bad looks like. One of the things that I'm a massive fan of and have become a massive fan of in the last few years is Moscow tables. So these are called must, could, should, and would like categories. And I'm not going to read everything on this table because there's quite a lot. But as we have said several times, we will share the deck. Take a screenshot of it now if you want to have this to hand. But these are all the things that you must be doing on your LinkedIn profile, should be doing, could be doing, or, not that they don't matter, but they're just going to give you a little bit of a bolster up. But the musts, you must have an excellent headline to stand head and shoulders above everybody else, and an excellent about section to then hook people in to wanting to have a conversation with you. You need to tell people what you do and who you serve in those two sections almost immediately. So someone says, yes, this is someone who is relevant to me and is worth spending the next however many seconds of my time on. You need to make sure that you're connecting with new people every week and expanding your network, have at least one recent recommendation on your profile, and that you post meaningful content once a week. There are a couple of reasons that I say this, and one of them is for getting attention from people and standing out, and the other is the LinkedIn algorithm itself. The algorithm, I don't know if people are aware, rewards behavior, much like anything else, and it monitors everything. It monitors how much time you spend looking at posts, how much time you spend commenting on posts, how many posts you've written, what format were they in, all of it, absolutely everything. So another top tip that sort of isn't really in here is to make sure when you are posting that one piece of content a week, use different post types. Because if you always post text, by post number 5 or 6, the algorithm is actually going to punish you and give you less engagement, because LinkedIn doesn't want a sea full of text posts. It wants variety, and you have to cater to it if you want to get the best results. So with all of that in mind, Bob, when you look at a LinkedIn profile, what grabs you?
The headline. It's the first thing you look at. And again, it's like a shop window. If it looks good and you keep scrolling down, you're probably going to scroll down anyway, but those are really good headline will make you want to read more and dig a bit further into their summary and what they've been doing.
And I think, Bob, we said this before, a picture, which I haven't actually included in here, a good picture is so important, because LinkedIn is like a business dating profile. If someone has a reason to want to go and look through more, you've got like just those few seconds to capture them and give them that reason, and you capture that with the picture and the headline, right?
Yeah, make it professional, have a good clear picture. Don't do anything too quirky, don't have sunglasses on or whatever it might be. It's got to be a good professional picture. We're on a professional networking site here.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely adore my Oakleys, and I spend most of the summer walking around in them, but I would never even dream of putting that as my LinkedIn profile picture, because I just know that's not that's not a good idea. People want to see my face, not my taste in sunglasses. And maybe other people don't like my sunglasses as well. You never know. That whole discrimination thing starts coming back into it, doesn't it? If you invite discrimination by doing something, I saw someone who had clearly taken a trip to SeaWorld, and they'd put a profile picture of them like swimming with dolphins on their LinkedIn. And I thought, well, that's really cute. And that kind of, I get why you've done that because it's an amazing experience. But there are a lot of people who are very opinionated about like animals being in captivity and stuff. And it would only take someone to look at that. And that kind of puts you out the running for a job, doesn't it? Or can do.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because you might not think that when you're taking the picture. You think, oh, this is a nice picture, I'll put it up. But yeah, you've got to think about what the implications might be.
Yeah, it's crazy how much we have to think about these days about absolutely everything like that. So moving on from the Moscow table, hopefully people found that useful. A comparison of a good profile and a bad profile. I've taken the liberty of saying that. Oh, thank you very much for the thumbs up. Taken the liberty of saying that my LinkedIn profile is good, and then I've taken another one on the left hand side, which is not good. So if we start to break it down, we can look. There is something that is very good about this profile, and that is the picture. The profile picture in itself is great. The guy has got his hair done. The background is blurred out. He's not wearing anything professional or corporate, but it's a nice photo, and there's nothing offensive about it at all. You can see there's a verified profile there, which is a good thing to see, and you can. And that's about where it starts to run out, really, with the good stuff. We'll start with the average. The banner. It doesn't tell me anything really. Bob, does it tell you anything? It's moderately attractive, but that's it, right?
Yeah, like sitting in meetings, maybe.
Yeah,
Ideas, planning.
It's not really screaming, I do technology, or I'm great with people, or telling me who you serve or what you do. So in my mind, that's kind of a bit of a waste of space there, really. You've got a whole great big area to tell people a whole bunch of information. And this made me look at my profile doing this in a really critical way. And my banner is only okay at best, really, because I'm parroting what is already coming below. I've put my name, I've put that I'm a Microsoft 365 and modern workplace specialist and what I do, but I haven't really said who I serve. And so I'm missing a couple of criteria there, and I do need to go and rework that, having done this. But going back to the biggest problem that I see on this profile, and that is the wasted headline. You're an IT manager in technology. Well, by telling me you're an IT manager, you kind of tell me that you're working in technology in some way anyway. So you're not really telling me anything, right?
It's pretty vague. Yeah, I mean, put industry, go into a lot more detail. That's
Any verticals that
really.
you specialize in? Any like great projects that you've done? What just anything that tells you a bit more. Some of the, like you say, some of the technologies that you work with, perhaps. Whether you're on the people side or the technical side, or just something more than that. If you look at the first section of my headline, I've said that I'm your go-to Microsoft 365 migration and security specialist. So what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to convey here is that if you've got a Microsoft 365 requirement, particularly migration or security, you need to come and speak to me. That's what I'm driving at there. And does that resonate with you, Bob?
Yeah, exactly that. Your go-to M365 specialist.
That's it.
Instantly grabbing your attention.
That's exactly. It's attention grabbing, right? And it's trying to tell people this is what I do. And for, several hundred people, they might not have that requirement. But for that one person that does, all I need them is to then click on my profile and then go and look. That's all I'm trying to do at this point, is just snag someone who has that requirement. So speaking about sections, if we look at the profile on the left and look at the about, as an IT specialist with a keen eye for technology and a results-driven mindset, I'm passionate about helping organizations thrive. Well, everybody, presumably, who is in the world of work wants to do a good job, right? And in my mind, that's not really saying very much. You've not told me what technologies you deal with or how you can make something better or how you can make a problem go away. By comparison, What I've tried to do is say that I'm an experienced Microsoft 365 specialist helping businesses securely migrate, protect, and optimize their data with tailored Microsoft powered solutions and cutting edge technology. I like working with new stuff. I work with businesses and I do security, migration, and data protection projects. You know, to be fair, I could probably go a bit heavier hitting on that if I'm being super critical. But you know, I then go on to say I help business owners, C-suites, and tech departments get the most out of their M365 investment. I'm then saying who it is that I serve and who it is that I'm helping. So again, what do you think? What do you think about that, Bob? Let's break that down.
Well, I talked about it on CVs. It's showing the return of investment. What is someone going to get from you? What value are they going to get when they hire you?
Mm-hmm.
And that should all be talked about on your brought to life on your about section, your summary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for me, like these are the most important bits. The other thing that's that you should be including is if you've got a website or a blog or anything like that, you need to include that on your LinkedIn profile because it's just another place for people to check the stuff that you've done before. I get a surprising number of people when they want to work with me that go off to LE Tech Solutions and check the website. I don't even know that these people have done this, but people have come up to me and said, "Oh, hey Matt, I saw this. Da, 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 da. Oh, by the way, like your website." And it's another thing that's just handy to have if you've got it. But again, if you've got it, it has to be good. That's the one thing. And here we go, top tip, like big flashing light on it. If you have got it, it must be good. Otherwise, don't have it. Got a Twitter profile with no posts? Get rid of it. If you've got a LinkedIn profile but you're doing absolutely nothing with it, get rid of it. If you've got a website that is massively out of date and looks like it came from 2005, get rid of it. It sounds brutal, but it's not. It's just being really critically honest and saying this is what people want to see. And if you're present somewhere, then it's got to be decent. Putting your business owners hat on, Bob. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to, if you're going to do something, make it look good. Otherwise, you're going to look average, and you might be passed up, and someone else will be looked at and hired.
Because it is a competitive market, right? It's super competitive. Just a message for everyone at this point is a quote from Steve Bartlett, and I really like the guy. I just think he's a self-made entrepreneur who's done so well, and that's you don't become unstoppable by stopping every time you have a question or hesitation. You become unstoppable by refusing to stop. And that leads me really neatly into the timeline to success with all of the things that we've been talking about up until this point and the amount of effort that you're going to have to put in order to get success in this market. Okay. Not having a gig or a job and then trying to find a gig or a job whilst out of work is in itself a full-time job. Right, Bob?
Looking for work is a full-time job if you're out of work and actively looking. Yeah, I say that to so many people.
You summarized that so much better than I did.
But it's true. The amount of investment you put in terms of time and effort, it can be relentless. We see people posting on LinkedIn all the time about how they've been at work for a long time. And it's true. You've got a lot to do sometimes.
I'm just gonna take a little quick segue on that. With the LinkedIn posting, when I say post meaningful content, I would strongly recommend that people avoid posting content that comes across as whingy or moany or anything derogatory towards recruiters, the employment process, the hiring process, or anything like that, because all it's going to do is turn people off. I've seen a few people do it, and I just think, you know what, you've got a really good profile. You look like a good candidate, but you've obviously been burnt a couple of times. Like we all know, we hear the horror stories about ghosting, and we hear about how people get so far down a process and then just don't get any feedback back, and it is demoralizing. It's horrible, but at the same time, posting about it, unfortunately, probably isn't going to change it.
Yeah, you'll get noticed as the moaner, potentially, and it's all there in the background. People look at LinkedIn profiles.
They delve into they delve into your posts if they're interested in you, and this is the worst bit. You've achieved peak interest. You've done the hard bit. If they then see
Yeah,
some posts and that turns them off, you've done all that hard work only to undo it by by saying, oh yeah, I worked with this person or this agency or whatever, and they never got back to me, and I'm really demoralized, and searching for a job is so hard, and da 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 da. It's just try and keep it positive, try and keep it factual, try and keep it all about what you can bring to a business.
yeah. Or it's not actually all about keeping it positive. It's about keeping it professional. You can disagree with someone, of course you can, and you can have a conversation about it, of course you can, but
Mm,
in a as if you would around a work table,
yes, that's
debating about it.
yeah, no, that's such a good point, isn't it? If you want to say about how upset you are, and how difficult it's made it, and get more personal, then perhaps take that into a different social circle. Um, so this timeline, I'm not going to go over the timeline, but effectively, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of it, I would take a screenshot of it now and put it to one side. This has everything that you need to do in order to get yourself to the interview stage, or thereabouts. I would say in about 8 weeks. These are things that I have personally done when I've been looking, and I have not been out of work for more than 6 weeks in the past 8 years, all the way through the pandemic. And maybe I've been lucky, but I've always followed a very similar process, and it works. And it's a combination of job applications and making sure that you do all the right things on LinkedIn, and it's all laid out for you here in this timeline. We kind of touched on it at the top of the call, Bob. Networking into a role. How often does this happen?
Yeah, really often. In a market that's really competitive, people applying for jobs left, right, and centre. You want to try and maximise your chances, and you do that
Mm.
by speaking to and networking, engaging with people that you know in your network, creating new circles, and getting yourself known. And you'll be surprised how often it happens, and people land jobs through their own
Do you
efforts.
do you ever have a role, Bob, where something comes into you from a client and you just know off the top of your head there's three candidates, you know one of them will fill the role, so you don't even advertise it? Does that happen?
Yeah, I don't advertise all my jobs
There you
because it
go.
costs a lot of money.
Yep.
I'll get a lot of work to do off the back of it.
Mm.
I've got to look at a lot of CVs and speak to a lot of people. If I know people, then it makes sense. I'm networking with people, and I'm dealing in this space day in, day out. I'm going to know people, and I'll contact those people.
And apart from LinkedIn, Bob, how else can we get some of your time? How else can we get on your radar? Is there anything that you can do outside of LinkedIn and job applications?
Um, I think you do want to be on the phone talking to recruiters. So I hesitated there a little bit because I think it's a great thing to do.
Mm.
And I also dislike it from a personal perspective because obviously my time is quite precious. And if everyone was phoning me, I wouldn't be able to get my job done. But ultimately, you do want to be known. And that's through everything you do on LinkedIn, dropping your CV and an update email through where you can. Um, regularly calling your recruiters and getting an update from them as well, and making them known.
So a really good thing to do, in my experience, is to find recruiters that work in your niche. So for me, it's Microsoft 365, but for other people, it might be certain areas of development, graphic design, whatever. Connect with people that are in those organizations. And then, as Bob says, pick up the phone, call them, go to the website, find the number, do it the old fashioned way, because it does make you stand out. And that comes neatly onto job applications. I'm sorry, I'm whizzing through a little bit because we're eating into the Q&A time, and we've got some really good questions to answer. And I've just listed down a few do and do nots here. So writing custom and tailored CVs, Bob, are these important? Do they strike a chord? Is it better to tailor after the initial application, maybe once you've had a chat with a recruiter? What do you think about that?
Both. Now, don't get me wrong, this is going to take up so much of your time because you're going to be applying for so many jobs. I get that. But if you get your generic CV versus a CV that you spent a few minutes updating and making it very specific, that one is going to stand out. So yes, I would definitely just make it relevant, even more relevant, flesh out some of the juicy bits for the specific job, and use that to apply.
Okay, So that sounds great. And in terms of calling recruiters to follow up an application, I know we have ever so slightly contradicting views on that. So why don't you share your view and I'll share mine?
I think it's, well, like I said earlier, my time's valuable, and I'm not going
Yes.
to speak for all recruiters, because some recruiters might not like it. I think it's a good thing, that you do it. It's going to help your chances so long as it's done in the right way. If I just get a phone call saying, "Hi, I've just applied for that job. Can you look at my CV?" It's just another phone call. It's not giving me anything. You've got a few seconds to grab the recruiter's attention, um, and
Go
make yourself stand out.
Goes back to what we said just a few minutes ago, which is if you're going to have something, it's got to be good. And if you're going to do something, it's got to be good. So, what I've done very successfully with contract roles before, and this has landed me, or I've ended up landing three of these gigs that I've done in this manner, is to send an application and then I've genuinely done this, put a timer on because I know that I'm a good fit. I can see that I'm a good fit because the spec's good and I know that I can do the job. Put a timer on for an hour and then phone them up an hour later and say, "Oh, hi, my name's Matt. I applied for this role. Have you got just a few minutes to discuss it? Because I've done this for XYZ customer, had these results, and I believe I'm a good fit." What you're doing is you're saying who you are, you're qualifying, you're saying that you're a good fit, you're qualifying it with some follow up, and then you're also saying, is now a good time? And it's a little bit like a cold call, but it's not. It's like a tepid one. It's not warm, it's not cold, it's somewhere in between. Hopefully, they haven't read your CV yet, because what happens in my experience is most people go, "Oh, this sounds really promising. Let me just get your CV up and let's just have a quick look." And they will then spend about probably double the amount of effort that they would looking at my CV because I've got them on the phone. And it then leads to a much more meaningful conversation. That's just my personal experience and how I would recommend people approach that. Um, but obviously, your mileage may vary, and you've got to test these things. Another thing which we didn't touch on earlier is the more often you refresh your CV on job boards, the higher up you will rank because it will look like you have recently uploaded a CV, changed something, etc. And that's going to increase your chances of appearing higher up a stack of applicants when a recruiter's searching, right?
Kind of, yes. What the search results are based on the information that's on the CV. So if your CV is littered with everything that's the recruiter's searching for, you'll appear towards the top. But yeah, it will also tell you how frequently the person's updated their CV.
Or whether
So
they've
yeah,
updated
that's
it within the last week or so, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Or 3 months ago, and then
And yeah,
you suddenly in your mind as a recruiter go, 3 months ago you uploaded a CV. They're probably not looking.
probably off the
I'll
market by
start
now.
phoning these people who have done it in the last week.
Makes complete sense. The do nots, don't fire off hundreds of applications about absolutely anything and everything that you might be qualified for. There's nothing that's a bigger turn off for anybody than that. Don't take my approach and call and spam recruiters every day because they get so many phone calls. And as Bob has said, their time is precious. And the last two are linked. Sidestepping recruiters and going directly to clients or negotiating them directly is a terrible idea, particularly if you are a techie, because we techies often are terrible salespeople, really, really bad. And Bob and his team are excellent negotiators. I'm not going to say salespeople. I'm going to say negotiators because I think that's a much more accurate reflection. And they will be able to get you through the door the better than you can, and into that interview room, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, stick to what you're. Well, the thing is, techie people are very good at tech. They might not be good at writing a CV or anything else, but they're very good at tech. So leave the important things to other people.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Right, okay. I am going to stop sharing now. I'm going to re-spotlight Bob and and we have a few questions in the Q&A. I opened up a whole bunch of questions before, when people were signing up to the webinar, and I can also see that we've had some questions that have been posted as we've gone, which is great. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll try and answer as many of these as we can. We'll probably go a little bit over time if people can stick around. Bob, I don't know if you can stick around. I certainly can for the
Yeah,
next
all
few
good.
minutes.
This is going to be useful stuff.
Yeah, amazing. So, question number one: what is the best way to showcase your future value to a prospective employer when most seem to be looking for a perfect role fit?
Okay, so you can demonstrate values in different ways. So one might be on your CV. We talked about that, how you write your CV and how you add value and talk about your achievements and show your return on investment. That's great, but also you can add value by building your network and your brand and showing that you're out there and you're front and center.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, if I'm looking to hire someone who maybe isn't a perfect fit, what I'm looking for is to demonstrate any related tasks, roles, or KPIs that they've succeeded with before. So maybe it's someone who is a BA, but with a bit of a flair for doing more technical work than just the business analysis, looking at a more technical role. I want to know all about all those slightly more technical things that you did and how you excelled at them. Question number two: what is the best way to connect to decision makers and stand out in a crowded market with so many people putting out content or looking for new roles? Before you go, Bob, I'm just going to say a really interesting stat I heard is that LinkedIn has, I think it's something like 2 billion members now, so a quarter of the population. And of those members, only 2% actively post. So it may feel like, because you see loads of content, everybody's posting, but they're not. So bear that in mind. Now, Bob, what were you going
Yeah,
to say?
and it's hard when you start. I used LinkedIn for years, or didn't use LinkedIn for years. I didn't do any content, and I just used it to search for people and try to connect with people. And then when you start writing some content, it feels uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you become doing it. And then I started doing video, and I felt really uncomfortable doing video. But now I'm becoming more comfortable at that. So it's making that transition, and
Yeah.
becoming comfortable doing it, and then following a consistent approach. I think if you start doing something, see it through, and you'll see it takes a long time, and then you'll see a lot of reward as you keep doing it.
And that's on the content side. On the relationship building side, for me, I find it all about sending connection requests. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can send connection requests without any message, and actually, that seems to be the current trending best practice because people just look at your bar again. They look at your headline. Someone looks at your headline, looks at your profile picture, and goes, "Yes, this is someone I want in my network," or "No, this is not relevant to me." So make sure you hone those two things. The other thing you can do is send tailored connection requests, but they've got to be good. So try and find something you share in common. So there was someone I connected with a little while ago who had a picture of, I think it was the Mercedes Petronas F1 team, and I'm into F1 and motorsport. So started off a conversation about that. The other thing that you can do is send a connection request and then follow up with a message once they've accepted, saying something along the lines of, "Hey, thank you very much for accepting my request. I'm glad to be in your network." Make it about them, and then say, "How are things in your world?" That is a really nice open ended question that they can interpret however they want. They can take that to mean business or personally or anything else. Um, Someone else
Yeah, I
asked a
agree.
best.
And
Sorry, Bob.
sorry, just on that, Matt, I agree. Adding a note is good, but only if you've got something good to talk about. And what I mean by that is there something related? Have you got something in common? Do you know about the company? Have you got a contact in common?
Keeps
Otherwise,
wheeling back to
I'd
this one theme, doesn't it? If you're going to do it, it's got to be good.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, Someone else asked, what's the best way to get outside IR35 work in 2025? Well,
I think that's a whole webinar in itself. I think. Um,
I think you're absolutely right, but I am going to summarize it in one very easy, shameless plug, and that is that you need to join the Freelancer Launchpad. This is exactly what my new community is all about: working directly with clients, not having to go through long-term application processes and doing fractional scope of work based type projects. So look at that avenue if you want to learn a bit more about that. But other than that, it's a huge topic. Um, I would like to understand the impact of AI on CVs and whether we should just get AI to write one for us. I think we said before during the webinar that really no, you should be using AI as a friend to help you. You shouldn't be asking your friend to do your homework.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So um, get it to a good starting point, and it's all about what you put into AI is what you get out of it. So give it lots of good information, lots of good scripts. It will give you a good starting point for you to work from and build your CV from there.
Excellent. Everyone knows how poor the job market has been over the past couple of years. Are there any indications that this is likely to change? Yes. We shared our ONS data and then the notional slash forecast predictions for 2025. And both Bob and I, and what we're seeing actually in the marketplace being sat within it, is all pointing in the right direction, that we are going to be seeing a much better year this year, both on the freelance slash contractor and perm side. What key sections should every good CV have, and how can I optimize them? And what red flags in a CV might lead to immediate rejection by recruiters? I think we've answered a lot of this, Bob, but I don't think we've answered the red flags thing.
Yeah, we talked about the CV structure. Well, we did talk about the CV length, and if your CV is too long and it's going to take too much time, then you're just turning someone off, and you want to turn them on, not off. If you are you want to apply for jobs that are relevant for you, and sometimes what we see is people will just happily apply en masse to loads and loads of jobs frequently. And you don't want to become known as that person. You know, you don't want to see that and go, "Oh, I know, yeah, he's applied, she's applied before." Um, you want to look at someone afresh and then go, "They look good. I want to take a look at that." So make sure it's relevant jobs that you're applying for.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And then how do we navigate the constant issue of fake jobs or ones that have been filled and the advert reposted?
Okay, so
It's a hard
um,
question.
I've never posted a fake job. I never understood the benefit. Yeah, you're going to get loads of CVs of people, but you can do that in other ways. It's going to cost you money to do it. I don't understand it. Um, how do you navigate it? Well, it's difficult because if you see a job, you think it's fake, you still want to apply for it anyway. So you should probably apply for it anyway. But if you could probably start sussing it out later in the process. You know, if they're just intel gathering for managers' names or
For,
team size or
yeah, for me, the classic telltale is when someone phones me, they're very vague about what it is, and they immediately flip it to me. And they say, "So tell me, Matt, tell me about you. Tell me about what you did at your last company. Like, tell me this, tell me that." And then they'll very quickly say, "Oh, that's great. Have you got any references to back that up, what you just said?" And that they'll get to that point within about 10 minutes because no one wants to spend longer than that. And if that's you and you find yourself having that conversation and people are asking you for names and phone numbers of people, it probably doesn't exist. And you want to be start treating it, probably want to start treating it with some suspicion. And then you want to say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you send me a job description and give me some more information about it first, and then I'll consider providing some references at the relevant time. And a lot of the time, what you find out is someone will just go, yeah, great, thanks, bye, done. Conversation over. So that's one thing. There was a question that we also skipped over, which is someone who was interested in applying for roles in Dubai. How do I go about this? The
I'm not
best.
a specialist in Dubai. I've never
No.
recruited into Dubai. I've recruited into lots of countries, and I take the same approach, and it's via LinkedIn, and I go to my um, community and my searching on LinkedIn. So it's all about building a good profile, because if it's just a shell, you won't get noticed.
Absolutely. And you've got to, sorry, I'm monitoring the meeting chat as we go. If you if you're networking and you want to make that kind of a big move, and you've career contracted or worked built your career here and you want to move that abroad, I think the best way to do that is by networking. Again, that all comes back to LinkedIn, making your profile stand out and making sure that you stand head and shoulders above everybody else. Um, those are all the pre-canned questions that we had filled in when we started. But I can see we have had like so many more. There are some in the chat and some in the Q&A. We'll try and get to as many of them as we can before people start disappearing en masse. I'm just having a look at. Are there any that stand out to you, Bob? I'll just have a read of some of the. If you look at the chat section, I'll look at the Q&A. You pick out a couple and start going for it.
There's one about diversity on job applications, one of the last ones that came in, which I think is great. I think more often than not, they're genuine because they're used by companies to see what demographic people are applying from. People get worried that they're using it to discriminate. I hope that's not true. If you're worried, just put "I prefer not to say," and it's you don't have to put that information in. It can be put in at job offer stage.
There's a really, really quick one here. Does the format of the CV matter, i.e. PDF or docx? Does it affect screening?
Not for me, no. I do like it in Word because I would sometimes put branding on the top, add a little cover sheet at the top, fill in loads of information that I've got from my initial qualification core, goes onto that cover sheet. But I can convert from PDF to Word, so it's not a big. But I don't know the answer. I don't think it makes a difference if it's PDF or Word on different platforms.
I think notionally, from what I understand and what I've heard, that Word documents probably work a bit better. But again, that is notion and opinion. It's not fact. There's another one here. What is the opinion of explaining gaps? I had one due to a serious, now resolved health issue, plus a current involuntary hiatus of about a year.
If it were me, I'd put the reason down why you weren't employed. Otherwise, someone's going to look at that and go, "Whatever, I worked for a year. Why is that?" "Well, you haven't told me." "Oh, it doesn't look that great." If you put a reason down, then they can still make a judgment on it, but it actually gives them the opportunity to go, "Oh, okay, I understand, fine." And you can move on from it.
Okay. There was another one. As someone who has had a big mixture of both contract and perm roles, how can I condense both sides down in terms of what I did in each of those roles?
Anything longer than 10 years ago is probably not relevant anymore. I'm not saying you should delete it all off. You could summarize it down into just one line, say job title, dates and company on one line, and do that to fill the rest of the page.
What I've done with my CV, Bob, personally, is I've got I've got my most recent client and then usually two that then follow behind it. And I try and keep the most detail with the most recent, a little bit less with the client behind it, a little bit less with the client behind that. And then everything else is just bullets of the company I worked for and the years that I worked there. And I tend to find that works quite well.
Bullet points are really good. And also, hopefully, people are tailoring their CVs for each job anyway. So you might find that you condense one bit down because it just wasn't overly relevant. You put in what you've done, but something further back might be a lot more detail on it.
I'm just looking. Just looking.
What's your opinion on the common competitive salary for perm jobs? Yeah, I think it's a time waster. You're not going to attract people. It's going to turn people off. A lot of people might even not be actively looking. They might just be had a bad day at work and think, "I'm just going to have a look to see what might be out there." And if you're not putting something like 90 to 100k, then they don't know what you're paying. They might think, "Oh, actually, it might only be a 60k job. Oh, I'll move on. Have a look at the next job."
I can tell you now, if someone, so I've always said that I'd be open to the right perm opportunity, but the package would have to be the right thing. Otherwise, there's no way that I would leave freelancing behind. But if someone came up to me with like an amazing head of IT role for a really exciting startup that was offering a super competitive package with shares and all the rest of it, I would consider it. But frankly, unless you're going to tell me what you're going to pay me, you're never going to attract me. Because why? I've told you everything. I've told you what I can give you in my CV. I've told you what I can give you on my LinkedIn profile. And I've told you the value that I can give you. Why are you refusing to tell me the value that you can give me? I find it such a turnoff.
Yep, absolutely. And we don't post jobs with competitive salary because the stats have shown that you just don't get as many adverts once. So it's just a waste of time.
Richard's asked an interesting question. Do you see age bias coming in with either a long job history or more obviously the year the formal education was completed?
Yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah, I could. So you could get around that by taking off the dates of your university or your education and just saying what you've done, and then removing anything that's just too long ago, too far in the past. It's probably irrelevant now anyway, and just completely leaving it off your CV so they can't see the date of your first job.
And again, just
Um,
focus on those most three recent jobs or most three recent contracts, provided it covers a span of, say, 5+ years. That's probably enough, right, Bob?
yeah, the last 10 years is probably good,
10 years.
I'd say.
Okay. Alex has asked, is not having a website as a web developer a red flag? I never really have time to maintain my own site, so I tend not to bother. That's the way I see it. Interesting. LinkedIn is my
If you're
show
a
window.
Yes, LinkedIn is good. If you're an interim, you'll probably get more work if you had your own website. You definitely need a portfolio, I'd say. But you could link that on your website if you had one.
Interesting. Interesting. Richard said posting relevant content as opposed to cut and paste from somebody else, as so many do, is extremely difficult when you're out of work for a long period. Any suggestions? Yeah, okay. So I can see how that can be difficult because you aren't working on things and you're not getting all of those rich ideas. You haven't got, a problem that you've solved to inspire. So some of the things that you could potentially do is look to do a training course or join something like Pluralsight on a subscription basis. And if you just want to do it for a short time, you can get a free trial to many of the platforms like that, or Udemy or anything like that. Start going and having a look at some new technology, some things that have changed, and then post about that or use that for inspiration to then go and find something else that works for you. The other thing is, and this is very content specific, is there's what we call the pillar system, which is where you do one very big piece of long form content. So it could be a very in-depth blog post or a video for half an hour, breaking a very complicated topic down. And then naturally, from that one big piece of what we call pillar content, you can extract lots of other little pieces of content, which then form your text posts, your image posts, polls, and things like that.
Yeah, love that. And talk about what you're good at as well. I put a lot of content out and it's all about recruitment. And these ideas come to me during the day and it's all elements of recruitment. And if you're getting stuck, use ChatGPT. I train my ChatGPT to give me ideas about stuff that it's relevant to me. I feed it good scripts. I tell it what I do. I give it examples of previous posts that I've posted before, and it brings back other examples that I can then start building upon.
Excellent. One of the things that I saw on LinkedIn today was a video of a chap that was playing in the snow with his wife and his kid, and he recorded it and then put a whole bunch of amusing, I can't remember what it's called now, but 10 points in IT operations, for example, but they were all related to all building your business, whatever it was. But it was all related to what his kid was doing in the snow at the time. And it was just such a wholesome video. I really enjoyed that. And so content doesn't have to always be professional. It doesn't always have to be, on brand. Stuff about you is okay. I post about my motorsport stuff on a reasonably regular basis because again, it really it's something I enjoy and deeply care about. So that's another angle that you can approach that from.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of industry relevant content is brilliant, stuff that's going to get engagement, but people want to see you and the character behind the brand, essentially.
So there's a couple more questions. Alex has another one. Here's a question. What is the best way to transition to permanent work from being a long-term contractor?
Yeah, that's hard because of the stereotypical image of a contractor moving from assignment to assignment. And the question of, are they just looking for a permanent job because they can't find a contract role? That's the first thing that someone's going to think about. I think the answer is use your network. There are people in your network, your contacts, your stakeholders that you can engage with, network with, who will trust you. And if you've done a great job and you tell them, I've changed the circumstances or changed your lifestyle, whatever it is, I'm now looking for perm, they're going to trust you, believe you, and want to rehire you again.
to get even more specific there, Bob, the first thing I would be doing if I was doing that is talking to all of the people that I'd worked for in any of the organizations that I'd contracted in directly. So, for example, my delivery team at Pearson was made up of about 20 people. There's 20 leads. The delivery team at SSE was made up of about 10 core people that I worked with daily, 10 more leads. All the people that I worked with, sort of that were on the fringe of that or kind of dipped in and out, another 30 leads. That's 50 people just from two organizations to go and talk to. And they will all have moved on and all have moved around as well, because a lot of them were contractors. And so I think that's a really, really, useful way. Just try and remember these people who you worked with. And again, that's all about building those relationships. I'm just looking through the chat. What advice can you give regarding references? The first thing, and one of the things that I mentioned on your LinkedIn profile was to make sure that you've received a recent recommendation, which is effectively in and of itself a reference. So if you've done that and you've followed that best practice, the first place I would direct someone to is my LinkedIn profile and say, well, if you want to have a look at a couple of references, there are a couple of recent recommendations from XYZ about ABC. And then go from there. If they then say, oh no, we want something a bit more, specific and a name and an email address, just pick out the person who would champion you the most.
Yeah. And
that's not your mum
is
or
there
dad.
any is there an argument to building a case study for yourself as well, based on a recent project that you've done for a customer, highlight the problem, how you came in and solved the issue, and then attach the recommendation to the end of it as well?
Cool. I'm a developer in a service-based company. I don't usually get the information of quantitative value I put in from the work I do. Even after end-to-end development, if we don't have those quantitative measures to speak about, how can we highlight them in our resume? Oh, okay. Let me just give me a second.
Yeah, okay. You still might know the project and what it's doing and how it's helping and how it's gone from 1,000 users to 10,000 users over a certain period of time. You're helping that process along the way. So yeah, if you're lacking information, look at the wider piece. Now, it's really important to keep it all about you and not the team, but there will be some information hopefully you'll be able to pull from somewhere.
Yeah. It's so difficult, isn't it? So I worked on a business integration at SSE, and we took the business from being a UK operated business international, and we did that by acquiring a business over in Japan. Now that transaction cost £500 million, and at the point of me leaving, other than completing a successful integration, it hadn't generated any revenue. Or the benefits of that business being integrated into SSE is like a 10-year long play. So the work that I did is kind of, it's as you say, hard to quantify. So I think you just have to talk about the successes that you brought to the team and some of the things that you did very successfully. So if a big part of your role was architecting pathways and roadmaps like mine was, you have to talk about how you did that and the value that that brought to your project team, and kind of almost make it even more macro in levels of detail and get right down into the nitty gritty and try and find where that value was and what it was that you provided. And I promise you, if you sit there and think about it for long enough, you will find that. I can't really think about it in a software development term because that's not my world. But I do know from scripting that troubleshooting or fault finding and debugging is huge. So if you can say that you optimized X amount of code, you fixed X amount of forms or X amount of or Y amount of scripts, that might be a good starting point.
Yeah, or improved the process, took a process and improved it to reduce the time down to 10% of what it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed, Bob, we've had about half of the people drop off, and I actually, unfortunately, have a meeting that I need to go to at 2 p.m. So I, too, am going to have to do the same and end the session. But thank you, everyone, ever so much for joining. We really, really do appreciate it, and we hope that you found it super informative. Obviously, I can see people that are already sharing their profiles in the chat. thoroughly encourage that, because you're among a network of like-minded people. Now might be a great time to exchange contact details and do that networking. Arlindo, thank you. Alex, thank you. Oh, oh, thank you so much. That's really, really kind. Do you
This has
follow
been
the?
fun.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Bob, how have you found it?
Yeah, really good. Really good to talk about these things, and I think the Q&A sometimes is more valuable than the content because it gets real life questions coming through that we can try and help with.
100%. Like some of those questions I didn't even think about. So yeah, just fantastic. Sorry and apologies for the slight technical delivery issues at the start of the call, but glad that we got there in the end. I'm sure, Bob, are you open to doing something like this again? I definitely am.
I think we should. Yeah, we definitely should.
Okay, well, everyone watch this space, and unless anyone complains, we'll send you all an email when we've got the idea for the next one across to you, where we can share some more useful hints and tips. And yes, Seb, of course, we can share the slides. That's no problem. I will send an email round to everybody with the PowerPoint deck. Awesome. Right. Thank you all ever so much for joining. Thank you, Bob, for being a fantastic guest. And I will
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
You're so welcome. Look forward to seeing you all again soon. And until then, good luck with your job searches.